I've recently started creating my very own podcast, so I thought I'd teach you how to create yours. Here we go! Hello and welcome back to another video. I'm Alan Spicer, your YouTube certified expert. And if you're looking to start a YouTube channel, grow your YouTube channel, start a podcast, or push your brand out there onto the second largest search engine on the internet, you should click subscribe. Start creating. Now, some of you may have already fallen into the hole of my podcast. Basically, it's the Start Creating Podcast. You can go to startcreatingpodcast.com. It's me waffling about everything that I know about social media, about YouTube, and hopefully in a longer form, explaining to you exactly what's in my head when I create content or the news or what's going on in my life. A podcast is a great way to create long form content that you can either place on your YouTube channel or split up into multiple little pieces that can go on your Instagram and Facebook and your Twitter and your Tumblr and anywhere that you want. It's also somewhere that's free from the restraints of a YouTube channel. If your YouTube channel was to disappear tomorrow, where would your YouTube subscribers find you? In my case, I'm hoping that they shuffle over to my podcast and listen to me there as well. Alternatively, maybe you're a bit awkward in making videos, but you could talk for hours on end about your specific niche, and that's why a podcast favours you, because you don't want to show your face, but you're happy to entertain people by the audio format that is a podcast. So let's begin. Number one, pick the topic or the niche you want to create your podcast on. This works very similarly to a YouTube channel. As long as you can pick a niche and you can drill down into that niche and you're willing to talk about that niche for literally hours and weeks and days and months and years on end, then that is something that you can create content around. What you need to do is pick a niche, a topic that not only excites you, but in the long run you know that there is a fan base around. So if your podcast is all about the exciting world of just Alan Spicers, then maybe you have a limited audience. But if you're talking about the upcoming Marvel universe and how they're rebooting it for the second generation with Spider-Man in control or whatever, you can then drill down into every fine detail of that universe. Who Spider-Man is, who is anybody else that's within that MCU, for example. Maybe you're a wrestling fan and you want to go into every minute detail of every bio of every wrestler that's ever been. That's great, because there are wrestling fans that will be willing to listen to that. I know personally, I love wrestling and that sounds great. 2. Find a unique name. Just creating a podcast that is the wrestling podcast won't let you stand out. What you need to do is make sure that it's something unique to you that connect to the niche, but people can find you accordingly. So mine is the Start Creating Podcast. I mean, after all, that's been in the background of my videos for the last, I don't know, year and a bit, right? I've been telling you to go out there and start creating since this YouTube channel started, and it was just the perfect point in time for me to hop off and go and create a podcast. Mine is a call to action. Mine is a call to arms. I want you to go out there and start creating something. So I made it the Start Creating Podcast. Roberto Blake has the Create Awesome podcast. I listen to the Solomonster sound off when it comes to wrestling. The reason why it needs to be unique is that if you and somebody else has the same name in the Apple iStore, it will clash. If they've beaten you to it, then they've beaten you to it. If you can create something that's unique that you can then market, you can control that brand. I can put that anywhere and you know it's me. I can get startcreatingpodcast.com and I had no challenges for it. And as it continues to grow, people will find me because it's a rather unique name. It's connected to me. Everyone knows it's me. I can go and spam that specific very unique hashtag for me. When I'm asking for feedback on Twitter, they can use that very unique hashtag. Once again, hashtag Start Creating Podcast. Put yourself on a level, firm foundation, and then as you grow, people will be able to find you and associate you and that brand. 3. Logo. Now, this needs to be something that is immediately noticeable, and even when it's tiny. This thing has been in the back of my videos for forever, and no matter what, hopefully you've always been able to see that it says Start Creating, or at very least, know that it's blue and white with a black background. Now, I'll be honest, I created that as a t-shirt idea, and then it's just kind of sat there for ages. The initial idea was to sell you some t-shirts, which I don't think anybody ever bought. It's fine, I get that. I'm not here to huck your t-shirts. there's a store down below. People are more interested in me sipping out of mugs or telling you, here we go, than start creating. But I liked the name of it. I liked the look of it. So I took that. I knew that no matter how small it was readable. And I wrote podcast underneath it. And that became my new logo. Why does it need to be red when it's small? Well, if you think that just like YouTube thumbnails, you first make them HD and then they're never seen at HD. They're scaled down and tiny and tiny and tiny and then they're put on a mobile device. That's why I use large text on my thumbnails on my YouTube channel, so you can read it no matter how small it happens to be, and it takes up most of the screen. Now, when it comes to that logo, I'm doing the same. I'm making sure that there's nothing finicky, there's nothing fancy, it's not my face, because no matter how small it is, you're not really going to see it if it's like really, really tiny, is it? If you see the blue, the white, the hashtag, you're going to assume it's Start Creating, and if it's small enough and it's individualized on the Apple iTunes chart, then you'll recognize it that way. Some people use their face, but you still need to focus on how big the text is, because if this whole frame is your thumbnail and here is my face and my text is that big, imagine how small it is when it's shrunk down to that big. You're not going to read it. 4, podcast image. Now, there's a difference between the logo and the image that goes specifically with the podcast. Some people prefer to actually change the thumbnail for each individual podcast that comes out of their podcast feed. I have a different thumbnail on YouTube when I upload my podcast, because then that way you can kind of see at a push what it's all about, whether it's growth, whether it's go out there and creating content that you like, whether it's getting 6,000 subscribers in 20 months. All of those, by the way, are in the podcast playlist down below. But if you've got a very specific or a very special guest, maybe you want to change up the thumbnail just for that podcast and draw attention to that person. Maybe you want to change colour each time you make a new podcast episode so people can see that it's not the same podcast episode, or you want to put something specifically different in that thumbnail. Remember, it will be tiny, minuscule on screens, so make sure that it's bold and stands out, especially if you're using text. If you have a special guest, maybe put only their face in that specific thumbnail, because then that way they'll still see it Start Creating Podcast, and they'll see in the picture that it's Roberto Blake or Nick Nimmin or Desiree Martinez or whoever. 5, podcast hosting services. Now, this is something that confused me and stopped me creating a podcast for 2 or 3 years. YouTube is a hosting platform. You upload a video, the video sits there and it distributes throughout its network. That video will always be on their server, and no matter what, when people come to hunt for that video, it will remain there because it's on their cloud, on their servers. Podcasts need to do the same. You need to upload your podcast somewhere with someone, and then they inject it into a feed. That feed then goes to Apple and Spotify and Podbean and SoundCloud and Stitcher and anyone that you connect it to, dependent on their associations, and then that file is shared out to those networks and will always be on that server, because if you remove that file, the podcast is no longer downloadable or streamable. There are people out there that charge you. Libsyn is a good one that I know one of my clients uses, and all they do is they correct it all, they upload, they change all of the settings, they upload it to Libsyn. I probably pronounce it wrong, but bear with me. That then fires it out to its associated networks. It also gives you an RSS feed. That RSS feed you can then manually submit to other podcast devices and systems. They may charge you a small fee, $10, $20, $30, $50, depending on what package you agree with them. Libsyn's not the only one. There's Podbean, I believe there's SoundCloud. I personally use Anchor, but Anchor doesn't charge. In fact, Anchor was one of those venture capitalist projects in which they went out there, they decided that you could record a podcast on your mobile phone, and then from that mobile phone you can upload it to their cloud and their drives. They would then distribute it from there out to their selected networks, and then that would be your distribution, and they make their money through, I don't know, because they don't really have an advertising model worldwide yet, only in the US. And I understand very, very, very recently they were acquired by Spotify, so maybe that was their plan. Make a really fantastic idea of how to make podcasts really easy and then be acquired by a big boy, so now it's kind of immediately associated with Spotify. So what I do is I record mine on my phone, I then drag and drop in some key features, right? Whether it happens to be music overlay, whether it happens to be interludes, or whether it happens to be my Throwback Thursday style video that I add to the end of my podcast. I then upload, I publish it, I title, describe it, the lot, and then it pushes it out to other networks. 6. Distribution. Now, as I said, with Anchor, with Libsyn, with Podbean, they will have an association. They will have a group of people that they push it out to. They normally favour the things like Apple iTunes and Google Podcasts, and then they'll have their own associations with either their sub-sites or their business partners. I believe that Podbean has an agreement with iHeartRadio, but not many people do. Anchor now being owned by Spotify possibly means that they'll get more Spotify coverage. But when you upload your podcast, you will get an RSS feed. For anyone that's used to making blogs in the past, you'll know what this is. It's kind of like a sitemap, but for your podcast. It tells people what the title is, the descriptions, any tags, what category it needs to be in, and maybe even a show notes rundown of everything that happens to be in the show. That RSS feed you can take and manually submit anywhere that you want. So you can upload it to Anchor and have it do all the legwork for you, and that's perfectly fine. Or you can take the RSS link and then manually submit it to additional places. That's what I did. So I'm available on 10 directly through Anchor, and then I went off and found other directories to list my podcast on. Why? It expands the reach that that podcast happens to have. It might find 2 or 3 extra people outside the niche to bring it back in, and they might find my podcast, they might then find my YouTube channel and another member of the Start Creating family. Number 7, sharing. If you've got any successful social media account, you understand the importance of expanding the reach that your videos, your content, your social media posts get. And that's the same with podcasts. Just because you upload it to Anchor and Apple iTunes and Google Play Store doesn't mean that you can just sit on your laurels and do nothing. You have to do everything you can to share and advertise that content. In my case, I share my podcast 3 or 4 days later to my YouTube channel that is slightly more popular, and I have links down below to entice people to start listening to the podcast in future on their mobile device. I also share my stuff on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram stories and Tumblr, and post them on Medium and places like that, because once again, the wider the net, the more flies you catch. Those flies then join your social media family. I am aware that this analogy's now got derailed because I'm some kind of weird social media Spider-Man. And now that I'm Spider-Man, we're doing a full 360 right back to the initial point of niche. If you want to see my podcast, I've done a playlist up here. Hit subscribe. Go out there. Start creating your podcast.